Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers, and in particular, my audience on this week in interview. Welcome to this week's program on this week in interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. Of course, it's always a pleasure being with you on Wednesday night from 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The clock changed last week, so now Eastern Standard Time is the same as Atlantic Time. So it's 8 o'clock in Dominica, St. Vincent, Grenada. It's also 8 o'clock in New York City. So to my regular listeners, happy good evening to you. And if tonight is the first time that you listen to this weekend interview, welcome. I hope you too will become a regular listener to the and viewer to the program. Those of you who are viewing us from Dominica on the Nature Isle on RVR Jams TV, DigiPlay Channel 59, we're carried live, and also on Radio SBE in the Toronto market. Good evening to you all. If you're viewing us on Facebook, on the This Week in Interview Facebook page or the TDN Radio Facebook page, welcome to you as well. Or if you're on YouTube or Instagram, any one of the social media, if you have the ability to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you will know when TDN is coming on with one of our other programs, exciting programs like Dissect on a Saturday. Also, hit the notification bar, like us, make a comment. It all helps in enhancing the stories that we bring. So, what is it that we're talking about tonight? Well, tonight we are talking about rivers, March 14th, which is also known as pi day. Those of you who are mathematicians know that pi is 3.14. So 3.14 is called pi day. Pi is used in the calculation of a circle, the area of a circle, circumference of a circle. So it's pi day, we call it 3.14. If those of you celebrating your birthday on pi day, happy birthday to you. And one of the fans says that her birthday is on the 15th. So happy birthday to you as well. But more significantly, and what tonight's program is about, is the 14th of March is the day for action for rivers. Day for action for rivers. And it is what it says it is. It's a day when you need to see what's going on in your rivers, with your rivers, and make a commitment to take some kind of action towards the protection of that river. So that's what we're talking about today. I have guests on with me tonight, Mr. Henry Shillingford, Mr. Lennon Matthew, and Mr. Athie Martin is planning to join us, but he's in Dominica, has a little bit of challenge in connecting, so hopefully he will join us. But stay tuned, get your water, share the live, invite folks to view with us. And when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to my guests, and we are going to be talking about taking action for our rivers. We'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners and viewers. As I said, it's a pleasure to be with you. Wednesday night at 8 p.m. is the highlight of my week. I look forward to spending that time with you. We have wonderful discussions. So tonight we're talking rivers, and river as a Dominican, rivers are special and dear to me. If you are Grenadian, you call the Spice Isle, your cinnamon and your tonka bean and your sapat and nutmeg, and all of that is what part of your identity as a Grenadian. St. Lucians really um, circle around their piton, which is sort of like their signature. Um, Antiguans celebrate their beaches, Anguillas, their beaches, Barbados, their flying fish and their cuisine. If you've been to Dominica, or you're better yet, you're from Dominica, it's all about our rivers. Dominica boasts of 365 rivers. Um, you can argue that it is less, but I can tell you on a rainy day in Dominica, it seems like it is more because you have so many streams that are flowing, um, and just a lot of water, clean, nice, sweet tasting water, and really clear flowing rivers. And when we were growing up, I grew up in the country. So at the time, we didn't have pipe-borne water until later. We didn't have electricity until much later. And so our life was centered around the river. In the morning before you go to school, you go to the river, you take a bath, you collect water for drinking. On the weekend, you're doing laundry in the rivers. Um, when you want something to eat, you go to the river, you catch crayfish, or you get some fish, millet, dorme, and all of that. On a Sunday, you have a river picnic. We travel to all the villages and just have a picnic. Everybody has their food with them. You circle around, you have a little radio that plays music. People exchange part of their dish, and you have this wonderful time with our our rivers. Our farmers use river water to irrigate their crops. Um, Dominica's life was just is just centered around rivers. So if we had to assess our report card um, around how well we taking care of our rivers, what score would we give ourselves? When I circulated to tonight's topic and we said that we were talking about rivers, I got quite a few people that said, I remember when I was growing up, there's this huge river. Now I can cross the river without taking my shoes off. I jump from rock to rock and I'm across the river. There are so many people who are lamenting the state of our rivers. We see so many reports of construction activity, of dredging, of all sorts of malhandling of our waterways. And so the International Day for Action action for our rivers is something that I think as Dominicans we have to embrace. We have to embrace and we have to make it serious. It's like you have a child and somebody's abusing your child and you're not doing anything about the abuse. That is what is happening for our rivers. We're supposed to be good stewards of our rivers and we are just watching them dry up. We need to study and find out what's the problem and so on. And so my guest tonight, Mr. Leonard Matthew and Mr. Henry Shillingford. We're going to talk about taking action for the rivers. Mr. Leonard Matthew is the Public Relations Officer for WAVE, YT Kubuli Action for Viable Environments. Mr. Leonard Matthew is the Public Relations Officer. Mr. Henry Shillingford is also a eminent part of WAVE. He is the legal mind between much of the bylaws and the regulations and all of that for WAVE as well. WAVE has taken on the challenge of protecting our water, protecting our rivers, making sure that we create the awareness and the appreciation for our rivers and our waters. And so I want you to give a very warm welcome to Mr. Lennon Matthew, the PRO of WAVE, and Mr. Henry Shillingford, who is also an attorney at law. And we're going to talk. We're hoping to be joined by Mr. Athie Mater, but he was having a little bit of trouble connecting. So if he can, he will join us later in the conversation. So we're going to talk about action. What actions should we be taking? What actions can be taken? What actions it's our responsibility to take, having the privilege to be able to enjoy so much benefit from this wonderful resource of our rivers. So Len, I'm going to come to you first as a PRO for WAVE and ask you to, just welcome to the program and to make your opening remark.
Good evening to you, Drago, Mr. Shillingford, and to your listeners, those who listening directly on TDN and who are listening online. I'm no stranger to your program. I'm actually still in my office, so so excuse my attire. I'm still at the
you,
office.
you're properly
But
dressed, my brother.
yeah. But so like I've said before, for those of you who've known me, I have been a student of geography and science for majority of my life, my young life in Dominica as a teacher of geography, taught students on the different stages of the river, the importance of the river, the importance of resources, and my current career, I work as an environmental geologist, and I have learned a lot of things over the past few years when it comes to contamination, pollution, cleaning groundwater, cleaning soil here in the United States. And one of the reasons I was interested in joining WAVE is because of what I have learned over the years. And I think it was my civic responsibility and duty to give back some way, to help with my community, to help with my country. So the education I have learned, even if I'm not home, I think participating in an environmental aspect is contributing to my society. And WAVE, by the way, stands for Whitey Kubuli Advocates for a Viable
Advocate versus
Environment.
action. Advocate.
Yes. So it's Whitey Kubuli Advocates for a Viable Environment. And we've been talking and trying to build for the past few years to get a structure in place, to help as stewards for a healthier environment. A personal little story is, and I just had a conversation with somebody about 2 minutes ago, and I told them, when we contaminate and pollute our rivers, we think it's only the rivers we contaminate and polluting, and we really polluting and contaminating ourselves because our lives are inextricably linked to the existence of water. And we've heard how the most important and valuable thing we have on earth in our time here is time and life. And what sustains that life, believe it or not, is water. Without water, nothing exists. Without water, we cannot sustain life. In the case of Dominica, what we have are the beautiful flowing rivers that have created leisure, that have created finance, that have created recreation, that has created our existence. And as a result, it's our responsibility to be protective of that environment, that ecosystem, that rivers, because really and truly we are protecting ourselves. When we pour contaminants, when we indiscriminately use chemicals and fertilizers that get down into the rivers, it get down into the fishes, the crawfish, the VOs, the wigo. Then we eat those things and it affects us. And I have seen, increasing cancers, increasing certain diseases in Dominica over a period of time. And in my mind, there had been something to do with, the increase in chemical use and other lifestyle habits. So me here being on Wave is giving back to my community, my country through the experience and the education that I've learned, and not being in Dominica, but in some way being able to contribute to the protection of our environment, and our most talked about and greatest resource is our rivers in Dominica. And I think our life in Dominica, our existence is molded and developed by rivers, and I think we should do everything we can to protect that resource.
Certainly, we would like to be able to contribute to preserving the river so we can pass it on to the next generation. Mr. Shillingford, Henry Shillingford, welcome back to this week in interview. We've been on before. It's always a pleasure to have you. We have animated discussions, we have serious discussions, and we talk about action steps. So it's always a pleasure to have you. So I'm going to just let you reintroduce yourself to the audience, those maybe who would not be part of the audience the last time you were here, and to make your opening remarks about the whole idea of taking action for our rivers.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, and I thank Lennon for his contribution, both at the show and generally from his expertise, because that's really what we need here. Most of the best and brightest of Dominica are not here; they have left, and Dominica is, depopulating. And many of you who may not know me, I've been here for the last 40 years now, from 1990, so 30 something years. And I was in the United States and in London and so on. I came back here for this very point. I just thought the world was getting too dirty and too ugly, and I had 3 young children, or 2 at the time. And I wanted them to have this experience. And I'm very happy I did, because I think it's made them wholesome for the very reasons that you, Anthony, and Leonard talked about. It's really, Dominica is about rivers. You go to St. Vincent and St. Lucia, as you mentioned. Like St. Lucia, you couldn't bathe in the rivers for years because they had this germ in there that would get people sick. People just didn't use rivers at all in St. Lucia. St. Vincent is not known for rivers, or Grenada, whatever they know now. And, it's clear that water is the gift of life. In terms of actions for rivers, I've been, it's really disappointing. I would like to be joyful and positive, but so much of our environment is being depleted, and people don't really appreciate it. I mean, I really must say, Rastaman is the only one that really appreciate Dominica's environment. I mean, I've lived it to see it. And I think it has something to do with, as Lennon was talking about, it's not so much that you pollute the rivers, Lennon, and then you pollute yourself. I think you pollute yourself, and then you have no problem polluting the rivers. No, really, I think people are allowed to eat anything. There's no principles, like there's no lines in the sand. Like, it's like people do anything. And so if you do anything, as Malcolm says, you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. And I think that we're at that stage. The action on rivers. It would be so easy for a government to initiate all communities, with a river, to do something. It's really hard for individuals to take action, especially in the economic situation. So I don't want to blame government. But on the same level, in a small island state like that, having been involved in trying to organize people. And WAVE now was the idea that came out, well, maybe there are those in the diaspora who have expertise and access to resources, etc., that would allow an environmental movement, because it seems those abroad appreciate the environment, it seems, more than those here. And so, that's what it's about. But actions for rivers it is such an oxymoron. To have to really talk about it is quite, surprising. And there is no action being taken on any river in Dominica, right now. In fact, Live has dried up. A river man used to dive off when I was a little boy in Newtown. It's dry. And like we were looking at, I went up the walk of Jack's Walk, and I was looking down on Roseau River. And I mean, it's such a beautiful, it's the only living river in any capital city in the Caribbean. Still have Mile in it. It's just such a precious thing running through your capital. Mm-hmm. My brother, who's into air conditioning, says he can air condition every house, every building in Roseau from Roseau River. You can get the cool of the water and air conditioning. You can have central air conditioning for every building if they let it. And so it is. I don't want to be, my lady friend was telling me I'm so morbid, but there's very little
There's a reality
to be happy about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can make believe, I have a wonderful river. Now I am moving back onto my land, my family estate, which I've left dormant, thinking I could activate people to change. But in the end of the day, it's you that have to change. So I've realized that I should have gone there maybe 30 years ago. And one of the major things I'm trying to do now is to create a micro hydro, because it's an estate of about 100 acres. I'm trying to do a whole new experience there, an environmental thing, and a self-sufficient place. So even in terms of, you're talking about all those things, but 40% of Dominica's electricity is driven by water.
By water.
You understand? And there's no reason 100%. If they had listened to us when they were building that Dominic, me and Athie ourselves argued that, guys, it's better to do 5 smaller hydros around the island. You'll have lost less line loss, much less line loss, because running across from Trafalgar across to the East Coast to get to Daly, there's like 15% line loss in just running it. That means you produce 15% of electricity you produce is just lost.
Right.
So besides all the things that you told, the economic, I mean, energy is the source of everything, right? In terms of productivity. So besides everything you mentioned, 40% of our electricity can be renewable and driven by, just that one plant. And we haven't done any smaller micro hydro. There's no reason. I want to do one on my river, maybe 1.5 kilowatt.
Kilowatts.
And so, and because, we want to, develop a few buildings, etc. And so the action for rivers is love. Is to just love. This is water. I think that in Dominica, things are taken for granted, because you have so much of it. Well, you have so much bushmeat, we just cut all the bushmeat. Like all these things, and they don't understand how much, herbs is in there, or qualities of barks of trees, or the root systems, or the insects, or the birds, the whole diversity. So just as in political education, now people are ignorant about it, still ignorant about the Palestine-Israeli situation, like where these people come from. With all this education and information, it's amazing how ignorant people are. Lennon, you said you taught geography and you taught about rivers and so. I wonder how many, do they still teach geography? My children didn't learn geography. They don't even teach geography. And geo means the world. But they don't teach the world. So my opening remarks may not be, joyful, but they're very, very serious. This is a serious issue, and we have to address it. We can't hear you.
You muted, my Drago.
Okay, now you're good. Yeah.
Still can't hear you.
Your sign says mute. You're still
muted. You're still on mute.
Right. Still can't hear him though.
Still can't hear you.
All right. How about now?
No.
Yes.
No.
The fancy technology, I have I have a dial pad on my desk that controls the audio. No, Henry, I was saying that it's not morbid. It's laying down. It's perfect for what we're talking about, because how do we know what action we need to take if we don't understand what the current situation is?
It's they have built an asphalt plant on the banks of our biggest river, close to the mouth of the river. And it was given a 9-month, and 10 years or 11 years later, it's still operating. Gadakan has an asphalt plant.
Right.
One of his tractors got stuck and is still at the bottom of the bed of the river, and it's impossible to move. It's sunk into the middle of the river. I don't know. It's the Rolls land. They own both sides of the bank. They're renting it to God.
But the river doesn't belong to anybody. The river is public.
No, the water in the river is public, but the land underneath the river is owned by the landowners of the banks.
Oh, really?
Right, and they have riparian rights. They can take water from their land, from the river that runs along their land, for any purpose except to distribute it. Riparian rights are extremely important. You talk to Colorado and New Mexico about the riparian rights of the Colorado River, and you see how serious that is. Having access to a river is one of the preeminent.
No, but Henry, let me ask you: in a place like Dominica, so should we be advocating for changing those laws where the land in the river should not belong to anybody?
No, well, the land, it's just that the land doesn't stop. Remember, it just makes a hole and water flows through it. So that means just in the idea of land, it basically says they can walk. I mean, you can't walk on the river technically. I mean, it's nothing enforced, but you can sail on it. The
No, no,
water
no.
is public.
I understand that, but I mean, there are things called easement rights and different rights that where you can encumber land and prevent certain things from happening. So you could. I worked at Doasco for a number of years, and if
Uh-huh.
you run a pipeline on your property,
Yeah.
we can prevent you from building anything within X number of feet of that pipeline.
Yeah,
It's
because
still
you have the Water Act. You have an act of
right. So
parliament.
that's what I'm saying. So it's interesting. I always thought that the riverway, the waterway, was a public.
No, no, that
Yes.
act now gives the Wasco right over any waterway
Right.
to take water from it. So that same Water Act. And then under the Forestry Act, the forestry is responsible for rivers, which they do nothing about, like trees falling on through rivers. You need to clear them because that's what causes these flash floods. Because when it rains and it comes out, it gathers up behind these gathering. At a certain point, now it makes a wall and then it bursts it,
Right.
right? So the whole idea of keeping rivers clear of debris and trees is an important thing of forestry. They don't do that. They don't have chainsaws going up there and cutting these trees. There's trees falling all the time. And so
After we resource, that's awesome.
so these sort of fundamental things
Yeah.
just have
So
not been done in this
the-
country.
that
Athie's on.
Afizan, that's an interesting aspect of action that we cannot take
No,
it
but this is what
tomorrow,
we
but
chat about.
we can
No,
take
but
it
no,
for
this is
next
stuff
year
we
and the
should just
following year. Mhm.
Tony, and maybe Athie sadness, even his hand holding is expressing that.
Afi,
Deep
welcome
worry.
and welcome for making the effort to be able to join us. Henry, if you allow me, let me go to Afi
Okay,
since
go
he's just
ahead,
joined
Mr.
us.
Of course, I will
Um,
bow the microphone to Mr. Martin,
I,
my big brother,
I,
and my
I,
big sister.
okay, Afi,
I,
welcome. I'm very, very happy that you could make it.
my apologies.
No apology necessary. We're grateful that you made the effort to come on. Um, Len just gave his intro. Henry gave his as well. So you're right on time to give your intro as well as to just talk about your thoughts when you think about taking action for our rivers. Tomorrow being International Day for Action of Rivers for Rivers. Go
Well,
ahead, Afi. Mhm.
my first of all, thank you so much, and again, apologies for the delay. But my response to that question is based on what I know a river to be, and if you want to take care of a system, you have to understand its genesis, its starting point, its continuing down to its end point. And I believe maybe the biggest error we've made in Dominica is that we haven't helped people understand exactly what a river is. And for most people, including professionals, a river to them is the canal, the channel through which visible water is moving. That's not a river. That's only part of a river. And the problem has been that we've attempted to take care of the canal in the hope that that would bring back health to the river system. But in doing so, we've ignored the floodplain and the banks because we've continued to build with or without planning permission on the banks of our rivers. And so, one action that clearly has to be taken is that if we're going to protect our rivers, we have to protect the entire river system, not just the canal. So, we protect the canal, as Henry was saying before, from what I was hearing, but we must protect the banks by
Mhm.
enforcing the buffer zone and the setbacks that are for which provisions are made in our planning laws and do not allow hard construction to come right up to the banks of the river canal and to extend into the floodplain without adequate provisions for percolation and drainage in the floodplain. For example, if you go up to places like Emzor, you go up further, the Rosa River, to places like Coptall, and then up into the valley towards Forcani and all those other places. All the housing development in that area is in the floodplain. You go to
Mm,
any of our major rivers along the west or east coast, most of the agriculture has been in the floodplain. This is not to say you do not allow activity in the floodplain, but it must be controlled activity, planned and guided by the provisions in the law that would protect not just the floodplain, but interestingly, the constructed facilities that threaten the floodplain. Those facilities will be better protected if setbacks were observed, drainage arrangements were observed, etc., etc. That's one action,
mhm.
and it needs to be taken at the community level where house owners, contracting companies, architectural firms, planning people, etc., all need to be made aware that a floodplain is a critical part of the river system. Going
Yeah.
higher up
Uh-huh.
into the water catchment,
Mhm.
where again, in nowadays in the Rosa Valley, there's a tremendous amount of unapproved activity, construction activity taking place in the watershed and in the water catchments of the Rosa River, for example. That includes housing, it includes some agriculture, but more recently, it does include major construction projects that interfere with the percolation rate of the water catchments and watersheds, which means the recharge rate for the river system has been severely and is significantly affected. So again, knowledge and planning, permitting, and enforcement of planning arrangements that were designed and are designed to protect not just the land and the natural systems like rivers, but even the built facilities that we put in there. So I think that my suggestions for action would be actions that take account of the fullness of the river system, and so that some ameliorative measures can be taken in each one of the areas: the watershed, the water catchment, the floodplain, the river banks, and all the way down to the canal. Any attempt to do less than that is cosmetic
Yeah.
and will only aggravate the problem and eventually lead us to the point where, from a water surplus, we will become a water deficit country.
Deficit country. Lennon, I want you to put on your geography teacher hat, your geologist hat for a moment. Athie mentioned quite a few different terms: the canal, the riverbank, the floodplain, the catchment area. Um, I know that is a whole course on its own. But
Yes.
in the meantime that we don't have the course, for the benefit of the listeners, let me just say good night to some of my regular listeners. You have D. Easter, Alvin, Augustine, Century, a bunch of other people on. For just a very quick and fast, in a nutshell, description, technical description of a river system. Because as Afi said, most of us think of the river as just the channel of flow.
So in third form geography terms, I'm gonna tell you what the river is. So the river basically has three main parts. You have the head, the body, and the mouth. And everybody knows the head of the river is where it starts, up sometimes in the mountains. It's just basically where it starts. And the body is between that head and the mouth. The body is the entire length of that river system. And then you have the mouth where it enters into a river, a lake, or another body of massive body of water. Along that way, you may have different processes going on there. So you have three main processes that a river undertakes, and I'm speaking out of my head right now. But you have, first of all, you have erosion, you have transportation, you have deposition. But you can't think of a river in isolation of what it is. It's part of a bigger system called the hydrological cycle. And when we talk about water, the river channel serves as a conduit from moving water basically in a high concentration or where the rainfall, the abundance, to different levels. So rivers may take different shapes, different forms depending on the geomorphology, which is the landform. So in the case of Dominica, sorry, in the case of Dominica, we have a pretty mountainous area. And because of our high mountains, when there's winds, trade winds blow from east to west over the mountains, it's forced to rise, collecting all that moisture from the ocean. That's why Dominica has so much rainfall, because there's air masses coming from the African coast and the Atlantic has a lot of moisture in there. And it hits Dominica. Because of Dominica's elevation, you get what they call relief rainfall. That air is forced to rise. In terms of your chemistry, you have rising air, it cools, forms water droplets, they get heavy, it falls as rain. And that rain falls on a landform that is elevated. So what you have happening there, when the rain falls in the mountain, that water has to find its way to the lowest elevation, because water is liquid, it's fluid, it moves through percolation into the soil, through runoff, through gravity. You have that water coming from the mountains, making its way to the natural storage, water storage system. It's called the oceans. The ocean is our biggest water storage system. So you have that high relief coming down to the mountains into the ocean, and between the mountains and the ocean, you have all kind of things happening there. You have the significance of your forest. What your forest really does, it does three main things. Your forest protects your water catchment, your water drainage basin, by creating a cover to prevent evaporation. It also slows down the rate at which water gets into your soil system, because if you don't have any forest, when heavy rain falls, it flows over the land. You have a lot of erosion. You have a lot of transportation, and you cause sediments to get in your water system. Your water quality gets bad. So that's why the forest is really important. As a matter of fact, we can't even be having a conversation about rivers without having a conversation about forest. Because without those forest covers in Dominica, without that stabilizing force of the forest, we don't have any serious permanent rivers in Dominica. And then you have, evapotranspiration, where water gets back into the atmosphere, and that's where the Met Office people come in. The people who study weather and climate, they also deal with the dynamics of fluid or water in the atmosphere. So, talking about rivers, we also have to include the work that the people at the Met Office do in collecting rainfall, in collecting river discharge volume, in collecting river velocity, in collecting drainage depth. All this is important. What has to happen now is a marriage between all that information we collect and how that dynamic system affects our existence. So now you move from the head of the river, you go down through the body, and depends on your topography. That means you might have flatland, or you might have elevated land, or you might have different rock types. Your rivers may take different patterns, different forms. So you have things like trellis, you have things like radial. I know Grenada has a very good example of a radial drainage pattern, because they have one mountain area and you have several rivers coming from that mountain area to the sea, forming like the spokes of a wheel. It's called a radial. In some places where you have different rock structures with different resistance, it's formed rivers at different angles. All those things are part of the river body. In flat areas, you have a lot of meandering, because if the area is flat, you don't have the effects of gravity on this. So what happens when the river flows, it builds up in a section, and it's pretty neat. So it builds up in a section, it creates its own gradient, and that causes the meandering pattern of rivers on flatland. And then sometimes if you fly over certain places in the US, you can actually trace where old river systems used to pass, because these meandering patterns over hundreds of years move across the place. Even that happened in Roseau. If you go to Roseau, I heard at some point the river had different areas it can pass, and if you do the geology there, you can tell where the streams used to be at some point. You get things like raised river banks and so on. As you come down to the body, you will find depositional features like bars and banks of the river. You get cut off end of slopes. I mean, most of us who've walked up the river see the meanders. We like to go on the little beachfront in the rivers. That's the outer banks. They form like a little bay area. So we have that, and then you get into the mouth of the river, where the river meets the sea, and you'll have a slower volume. Why that is significant is because if you understand the parts of a river, you understand the processes that gets on in the river, then it helps you uh, 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 do better conservation methods. For example, because Dominica is pretty steep, if you go up into the mountains, the river has a higher volume just because of the nature, has a higher velocity just because
Mm.
of the nature of the landform. So what you have happening there is a lot of erosion. You find deeper grooves, you find deeper valleys. As it gets down into the mouth, as it goes
The
down through the
bushy,
body.
as we call bushy way.
Yes, yes. So as it gets down, you will see either depositional features or erosional features. This will change based on the discharge volume, and the discharge volume is affected by the amount of rainfall. So if there's a lot of rainfall in the mountains, hurricane season, we see what happens. So during hurricane season, we might have a larger, which is our predominantly higher rainfall season. You will tend to see the river volumes increasing. And what I have done in collaboration with Wave is I get with the folks in the Met office, and I know they've been. I'll tell you what, I got to give them props. They've been doing a fantastic job at collecting information on rainfall and measurements in a few rivers in Dominica. And the idea is, if you are going to have conservation, you need to understand these processes, as Athie said. You need to understand the parts of the river, the processes that are going on there, what is affecting that part of the river, especially vegetation. So when forestry says, I can't allow you guys to cut vegetation in a certain area, this is because if you don't protect your watershed area, you will lose your rivers. Not just cutting the vegetation, but the type of vegetation, because there are some plants that absorb more water than they give off or they leave, and that can affect the volume of the water. What if after Hurricane Maria we had a new species of plant that were water hungry plants? That could affect your water table. I mean, these are things that people don't even think about. So you really have to understand the system of the river, not in isolation, but how it exists within the hydrological cycle. What are the factors that can negatively affect it? What are the factors that can enhance it? As a matter of fact, there's a calculation they call the water budget. And the water budget is basically a calculation of how much water that is lost in a drainage system or in a river system through percolation, through extraction, through pumping, and how much comes in through surface runoff, infiltration, and all that stuff. So there's so much involved in a river and a river system. But I cannot stress the fact that the reason why we are having that discussion about rivers is because rivers represent what gives us fresh water. Water is life. Life is the most important thing we have. And without water, there's no life. And especially in a small island like Dominica, if we don't have access to clean, fresh water, we're going to struggle to survive. I mean, right now in the world, places like California, places like Utah, places like Colorado, they're in the US and in Texas where I live, during the summer, they track their drought, how long their drought season is. Let me tell you how fortunate we are in Dominica. We are so fortunate we have rivers that are flowing 365 every day. Majority of that water goes through the ocean without use. So the water is basically, we can say, it's wasted. There are
Mm.
places here who are doing their 100-year settlement plan, their 100-year residential plan based on the availability of water, access to fresh water in the next 100 years. I kid you
Right.
not.
Yeah.
So
And,
there
and so
is
and so in Dominica we tend to take a lot of that
for
for
granted.
granted. So then I think we give them a really good geography class. I would like to suggest that with all the technology that exists right now, if the school system is not doing it, we should probably do uh, an online class, an online course that people can register and take, that gives them a little more direct information about the rivers and the whole river system. I'm going to take a quick break. We're supposed to take it at 8:30, but we had all of this great information. Let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back. I already see that we'll go beyond 9 o'clock. I hope you can really indulge me with an extra half hour. But when we come back, we're actually going to be talking about what we can do today, what we can do tomorrow, and what we can look to do in bigger things as we go along. So stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
Presented by. People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
How much Dominican history do you know? Want to learn some fun facts? We have a great and fun way to test your knowledge and learn more about our history. Get your copy of Dominic Anu, Dominica in Puzzle. Fun for the whole family. Available now on Amazon.com. Visit pushpast10.com to learn more. Email us at dominicainpuzzle@gmail.com or call 877-698-9894. Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
All right, so welcome back, listeners. If you joined us a little late, tonight we are talking about the day of action for rivers. And if you're listening to the discussion on how critical and crucial water is and the role that river plays, you would think that that would not be needed. But as Henry said in his opening remarks, um, maybe we are a society where we don't pay enough attention to enough things. So in other words, sometimes we treat our own bodies in a manner that is not suitable for the temple that our body is supposed to be. We treat our homes maybe a little different than we should, and therefore that translates into how we treat things that are supposed to be valuable: the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, our relationships with each other, our relationships with the environment, and all the gifts that we are endowed in. Henry, as a legal person, we spoke a little bit about riparian rights, which is the rights that has to deal with ownership next to the rivers and those sort of things. I like growing up in Castleberry, I'm aware that there were a lot of on the estates, and so in Castleberry there were a lot of buffer zones, not only as windbreaks but also to protection of the river banks. A lot of galba trees that were planted and all that sort of thing. But do you think that there's a need to revise some of those laws and regulations that to make it more modern? I know probably we're not enforcing what's already there, but in your opinion, and I'm asking you that because you said you're a landowner, if at least one river running through your property, so you're on both sides. You also fanatic about the environment and protecting the rivers. where do people find that balance where they have some land that's boundary if a river or river running through it, and they want to make use of their land? How do they go about it? Are the laws sufficiently in place to allow them to for that to happen?
Well, I mean, that is really not the problem. And by the way, Lennon, that was not a third form geography class.
And
um, that was pretty in depth. But it gets to the point about what you're talking about. I think Athie, who, I mean, this is goes way back and it's quite deep for us because, as I'm telling you, it's you don't just say water is life, and it really is.
it really is.
How you treat the water is how you treat yourself, and so on. And you can see it now that water is the most expensive product. I think if you compare it to the price of gasoline, it's maybe, right there. Now, um, again, getting back to Lennon and your question as to if we need more laws revised. No, it's like we didn't need no electoral reform. We just really need to enforce. That's what Athie was talking about. There are setback rules. Planning just does not enforce them. People knew the importance of rivers before. Just like you're saying the importance of forests to rivers, right? Forestry is control of rivers in Dominica. But they can't give me the rate of any river in Dominica any day. And we and Athie have been asking this for 40 years. We've shown them that each primary school in the country can set up a weather system to know the rainfall per day. It's so easy, but it's not done. You're talking about action for rivers, and I don't want to be the morbid guy, but it's kind of like boring for me after 20 years. It's no joke. That's why I feel serious. It's no joke, man. And you guys are abroad, and it really pisses us off that this is happening in our face. Like for example, I was telling we and Athie 20 years ago suggested, because we don't have any statistics. So to do any of what you're talking about, Lennon, cannot happen. There's no statistics. Like forestry is in charge, but they don't do it. We suggested a YES Corps. Youth Environment Services Corps would be like a new kind of Boy Scout that would just go through the forest with foresters and check things. If things needed to be moved, and they would learn about the forest and learn about Dominica, right? There was another program that was proposed at the same time, Cadet Corps, right? To have guys marching and carrying guns and making like toy soldiers. Guess which one? You understand? Now they got a bunch of guys that for the last 20 years that have been being cadets and learning soldiering and listening to commands and so on, instead of looking at the natural flow of things and understanding these organic systems in which we live. And so we become more and more inorganic people. Now, okay, that's this theoretical level. Legally, riparian rights and so on is just like Lennon said, it's not a problem about use. In Colorado and New Mexico, what he's talking about, there's real issues about use because there's hydroelectric use, there's agricultural use, there's use for people, and you got to share those riparian rights, and it's a whole complicated thing because what if you use too much in your area, then I won't get, and then so they got to be bargains. And so riparian rights is a big, big issue, the use of water. So in terms of actions like forming a YES Corps, teaching even 20 years later, doing that, having the youth that will go and follow that, right? In terms of we doing a project right now to do both those things. Every primary school shall have a weather station, and children will learn about the weather and what rain is. And we can then a project, but it's like, we'll talk about that privately, but maybe this is the moment to initiate a project that can happen in the United States among your colleagues in the university to study the rate of rivers in Dominica. I went to Jamaica for a conference. This was like 50 years ago. They could tell me the rate of 40 rivers in Jamaica any day. So in terms of action, look at inaction. Look at what they did in Rosa River and what they did in other places. They put stones on the side to protect the bank. Stones on the side, like it's a seawall. Water is coming this way, but they're putting stones here, right? In Rosa River, they created dams, which is totally opposite. Then they took the big stones and put it on the sides, right? The big stones have to go in the middle of the river that they can allow flow and allow the silt to run off. There's a German guy that did great work on that, where you put stones in the middle of the river, big rivers, right? Big stones. And as the water comes down, it bounces off of that and creates turbulence, which churns the thing and moves silt out the river. instead of this silt formation, which is happening a lot in Dominica. So there's bad action. So the action, all the things Athie said were, totally correct. This is the fundamental thing. But then you don't do bad action, and you're putting machines in rivers. I've never seen that before. Like after hurricane, there were so many machines in rivers trying to that was something I had not known an environment thing. So in terms of riparian rights, that is not a struggle. When people are not struggling about water, you have to have systems, irrigation systems, all of that thing developed, which Dominica has none of it. Athie will talk about the agriculture. It's only rain fed, talking about the weather.
Right.
Because agriculture is rain fed. We have done nothing on water like anything else, man. It's really a sad state. This beautiful place has just it's turning into a raisin. It really is. And when me and Athie been watching it, the audience has to understand this is not virtual, just talk. This is happening right now.
Right.
And, so what the action is to be taken is, form a yes score and get the forestry interested and active. There's no even talk about Rivers Day. Independent NGOs have to talk about Rivers Day. The government doesn't talk about it. Like it's not fundamental to their tourism, to their electricity, to their agriculture.
There's so much that depends. There's so much that depends on it.
Fundamentally, St. Lucia doesn't depend on rivers like we depend on rivers. I mean, it's everything we are. Why we have a boiling lake? Why do we have a World Heritage Site? I mean, anyway, I've taken up too much of Mr. Martin's time, who has a lot more eloquent than I am.
No, your contribution is totally on point. Athie, I'm coming to you. There's a lot of talk among those of us who care about getting the communities more involved, community ownership of our rivers, getting people more invested, getting people more concerned, getting people more motivated to take action to protect rivers. How do we even start to bite that apple in a Dominican context where our rivers are so taken for granted? People just see rivers as a thing that you put a bridge over to drive over. How do we approach getting that actual community involvement and ownership and care about rivers? Athie, are you there?
Part of the problem is that it is probably too simple to do, and people prefer to do complex things.
Right.
Years ago,
Athie dropped off.
I think we lost him. He might have.
Then we lost Athie. In the meantime, that we're waiting for Athie to come back. Glenn, can you highlight some of the activities that WAVE is involved with in recognition of the Day of Action for Rivers?
So in the Day of Action for Rivers, WAVE has partnered up together with Father Coffee, and we can't talk about rivers without mentioning the work of Father Coffee, who seemed like he is maverick. I don't know how to explain it, but for the past few years, he's been working hard to recognize the importance of rivers, the protection of rivers in Dominica. And it seemed like he's on a one-man journey, but we at WAVE decided we were going to create some of the partnerships. And one of the things we did was partnering with some of the schools who had, through Father Coffee's intervention, who had events planned in recognition of International Day of Action for Rivers. And I think that's very, very important because as you can see, talking to you tonight, Henry Shillingford, I've known of this guy a long time, and Athie Martin have been at it for a long time. These guys are not getting younger. The reality is, as we get older, we need the younger folks to be more involved and acknowledging the importance of rivers in their life and their existence, not just having it as a slogan, water is life. Water is really life. I mean, we say it, but we don't realize the implication. It is really life. And I think what we were trying to do is to get with some of the schools. There was a plan to meet at the Arch in Roseau. Several of the schools were going to meet there, have banners proclaiming the importance of protecting the rivers, taking photos of the rivers, and highlighting really the importance of rivers into our culture, to our heritage, to who we are, and to our existence. So we've partnered with this organized with the schools. I think it's what it does. It brings the young people to the forefront of the fight to protect the rivers. I don't think we can do anything sustainable about rivers without educating the young ones, having them informed, and that's why geography and education about rivers is part of the school curriculum. It's not just we doing about rivers. It's really a science. Understanding the processes in river, it's really a science. I mean, you can do serious math calculations in rivers if with river flow, evapotranspiration, all those things. So it's not just about coming out there, but really learning something, learning the importance of rivers, and getting these young people to buy into the conservation of the river and our existence.
Just to add to that, Len, it's just that these NGOs have been doing this all this time. Father Cuffey, was much more. It is to inspire the government. It's non-government organizations doing so. Let's say you did, and then you see it being important and successful. And I don't want to make anything, but I mean, at a certain point, this energy loses. You're just this volunteerism. You're volunteering your energy for people to use what it is for them. Like you're talking about communities, Anthony. Like look at Layu, which lives on Tichiri and is right by the thing. Look at what the sand business has done to them. Like they haven't. Why shouldn't they have gotten a percentage then for whatever loss? You understand?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like it's so like there is so like Athie was starting to talk about. It's really simple. It's really below your level, Len. Like all the things you're talking about. All of those may be true, but we're so far from it here in Dominica. This is really a simple place. It's the ability to take, which me and Athie have, tried to do, is to take that complications and make it simple for people to understand.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, if a government isn't even doing this and getting away with it, like really simple things, why isn't Dowasco doing something? I mean, on Action Day for the Wasco exists because of
rivers. Yeah,
the
and
whole
and, and
business is that.
and I don't know if like when we were growing
Like,
up,
it
as I
should be a whole national. Even when we were growing up, these were personal things that we took. Even the government really didn't do it. But at this point, and we don't want to overemphasize that, but it really is that it's beyond these individual groups now can support something that's being done nationally, right? Or by the government. But for them to initiate it at this point, it really is a problem. That's telling you this is from years of experience. And we were much more successful before. You understand? But by the wave of time, I mean, we were very active throughout the Caribbean, getting these. And remember, they tell you, well, they have rivers and then beach cleanup day, or, it's all integrated, especially in an island. It all happens all at the same time. It's not like, the rivers get messed up today and then, the seas do it tomorrow. It's all happening.
But Henry, I wonder about if it's that people don't see the value. So what I mean is that
they're not taught it. They don't understand it.
We used to go to the river to bathe. We used to, when you have cattle or animals, you lose them, they run to the river to drink water.
Now they open their pipe.
Right. And so now we have pipe-borne water. The disconnect is there between the river and the water in the pipe.
Like everything, like the disconnect of phones. Like nothing is separate from itself.
Right. And I'm saying that
of the other, and they integrate into
yeah,
our
what I'm saying is that because we had that experience growing up, it's natural for us to make the connection. There's a whole generation of kids
then that's the point.
They open the tap, they flip on the light switch, and
but you're not here.
It's not automatic. It's not automatic that they make that connection in the river.
But your generation is not here, dude. That's what I'm telling you. That's really the problem.
But that's what I'm saying. So in terms of taking action in the rivers, is it that where we have to start? When Athie says it's really simple, is that where we have to start to figure out how we can get folks to make that? Because I can tell you, when we were
Do it.
depending on the
It's
river for
that simple.
everything, when
If a
hold on, Henry, hold on. When we were depending on directly on the river for everything, if somebody put a caterpillar in the river and grading the river, the village would be up in arms and would stop him because people recognize directly. If you over there soiling up the river, when I come to wash my clothes on Saturday, I'm going to get mud, I'm going to get whatever. So is that where we have to start to start to remake that connection that this generation can understand? People no longer use the river for recreation.
Well,
There's
that's
no
but
river picnics
Anthony,
anymore. Mhm,
not to cut you, but that's where I'm going. Is that
mhm,
I'm saying that you have that memory, which is real, which
mhm.
is deep, right? But that memory, not only if it stayed here, would have protected those things because they would have thing. But that generation gets pipe-borne water.
Mhm.
Like this generation, you see, get information on the phone, and from your, you might be frustrated about some of that stuff, right? But that's what's happened. So you can't bring people back to your memory, right? Because that's personal. People
Mhm.
now can open the pipe.
Mhm.
So it really is about the schools. Like there's a primary school everywhere that there's rivers on rivers. It's a simple thing for a small country like this to make rivers a big thing.
Right.
So that the children, so then on that day, you can even create a picnic for the children by the closest river. There's always going to be a river close to any primary school in Dominica,
Right.
right?
And that's where
And
wave comes in trying to partner
no,
for its club,
that's
no?
where, yeah, but that's where the, why can't forestry do that? It's part of the government. Why can't you citizens abroad insist on that? It's really simple. It's really simple. You know what I mean? You have whatever it is, 30 primary schools,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you know, if it was again planned, people would generate a media, right? Even all kind of. If it was made something, people would participate. People have to feel. You can see. I don't want to be too preachy, but that's where we're really at. It's really simple, but there's no action being taken. It's not theoretical, and that's what's great about Dominica now is that you could just do it.
Mhm.
If you had the money and investing in it, or you had the political capital to do it, then oh, okay, you didn't have the political capital, but I had 100 grand US to do World Rivers Day in Dominica, right? I
Mhm.
would do it. I could get teachers with money and give them things and show them, you know, with a month's notice. I could do it.
So
What it
Len,
really is.
Henry's challenging us there. We're saying that we can probably be the nucleus, the spark that can try
But
to get that kind of movement going.
I get what Henry is saying.
Mhm.
And when you deal with something on a national level, for all of us to jive in one direction, it comes down to administration and policies and governance, because that's what our governance is all about. For example,
No, not to cut you, but in terms of this issue, right? It's
Mhm.
not
uh,
about any policies. It's just science and just
I know,
being able to bring it across to the
yeah,
children.
yeah, but I get that, Henry. I get that. But we're talking about International Day of Action of Rivers,
Right,
and now there are schools that are backing off on a little parade from the arch to their school in Rosa River.
right.
So what I'm getting at is, if we are talking about an International Day of Action of Rivers, and you have a policy that says, okay, on the International Day of Action of Rivers, every school has to do something with rivers. Every school has to go clean up their river community. Dowasco, Forestry, the Met Office have organ activities that they do in cohesion, not in isolation. As a matter of fact,
Domlek. Mhm.
On the 18th of March is World Forestry Day. That is a direct relation to rivers. So for a week of activities, we can have this thing, but it has to be, Henry, it has to be on a national policy, meaning that the Ministry of Education has to make it part of the curriculum. It has to make it part. That's
That's
where you
yeah.
start your education system.
No, but
What
that that is
what
what I
people
was referring to. But we're so, I'm telling you, we're so far from that because myself and Athie have been advocating for this for like 20 years.
Mhm.
It's
yeah.
not being done.
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying that NGO, so what I'm referring to, that one action,
yeah,
like doing something for primary schools around rivers on Rivers Day,
yeah,
Mhm.
using that and investing in that. But
Mhm.
yeah.
even that, as Athletes will say, That's just, it's supposed to instigate more. It can't be a
Yes.
runoff. So, but without that further support, then it becomes this national politics. And, because that's what it ends up being all the time. That's why it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
a small place.
and we get that. But at the end of the day,
Okay.
organizations like Wave and civic organization is what really drives policy and make people do their work. So part of it is not just government responsibility, and you and Afi doing it, but the consciousness in the
We
people
did
have
it.
to.
We're not doing it now.
Yeah,
We're
well,
not
you did. Yeah,
supposed
but the consciousness in getting people to more people to be on board with the idea of what you are guys are doing. That's important. Let's say, okay, let's forget about the government. Forget about the government. You have people who are in the schools like Wave is doing, and I can tell you from what we saw last year and this year, and as I always say, thanks to people like Father Coffee, who's been at it persistently, we've seen a marked increase in interest and activity in observing International Day of Action for Rivers. I've always heard it, but this is the first time I've seen more schools
A
participating.
lot of schools, right?
The Dominica State College has an environmental club. I know the Roseau Primary School, the SDA School, there are schools in Soufriere. There are lots of schools who are participating. And for those things to work, we as civic organization, take for example Jamaica. I saw a news article in Jamaica where a civic organization that was bent on the forestry was lobbying the government to put more money on the budget to do oversight and conservation of the forest. These are the things we have to be emboldened to do. Part of the problem is, as civic organization, you and Afi they call you rebels. You're not rebels. You're doing what you're supposed to do as citizens. We are supposed to tell these people, you're working for us. These are some of the policies we want. For example, you have Renault, you have companies coming to Dominica and setting up shop at the river. Charge them a tax. That tax can be used for the revenue they generated to put back into the communities, or to get programs related to rivers in the school added to conservation. Because the reason why they set up this is because they see the importance of having water in their process of their cement factories and so on. These are some of the things we can do. They're billing for Dominica. They're taking money from us. What if you charge them a 2%, 3% tax extra? That is revenue that can be used. But the problem, we have administration we can trust to do that. There's no idea. So it's not just, the consciousness is not just one track. It has to be a collection of civic societies, the education system, the policymakers, and frankly, Dominicans understanding the importance of rivers in their life. If I understand I am eating too much sugar is going to affect my health, I'm going to do something about it. If people understand that the existence of rivers in Dominica is their survival, they need to be emboldened and empowered to do something about it. And I think that's where we need to get. It cannot be just Afi. It cannot be just, and I love you guys, it cannot be just Afi and Henry Shillingford. But it has to be the elementary school guy, the preschool guy. And that is where you have to have a collective approach.
It has to be almost cultural.
It has to be cultural.
We have to think of it as a cultural revolution where our objective is to make it second nature that if you were in Dominica, you're defending your rivers.
Yeah.
And if the government will not add it to the school curriculum, the technology exists where we can do something about it.
Of course. It's an opportunity for kids to learn remote sensing. It's an opportunity for kids to learn weather reporting. Henry mentioned about that. Understanding what a rain gauge is, understanding this. These are important information that people build careers upon. I mean, you're talking about using technology to do a hurricane prediction. Why are we in Dominica not the country producing the most hurricane experts? Hurricane prediction experts. We get the most.
We're in a direct line and path of the hurricane every year.
Why are we in Dominica not the ones developing hurricane-resistant buildings and hurricane-resistant residential area? Because we get them every year. But you see, we have a creative spirit we are not tapping into. And it starts with our education system that is built by the policymakers. So if the policymakers don't buy in, then we keep going in that cycle where you just have Henry Shillingford and Afi Master fighting, and it's not made into the culture. Drago, when we first started talking about Wave, people talk about conservation. You cannot conserve anything if you don't understand the system and you don't have scientific data.
Right.
If you don't know where an animal lives, how it breeds, what it eats, what it drinks, its habit, you can't conserve anything. So for us to do this conservation, we have to understand the hydraulic system, It has to be in the schools. It has to be in the young minds. And I think hopefully what we would like to see is that International Day of Action for Rivers become a national event where
National event.
every schools make it priority. When it gets to that point, I then think we will see a change in the way we perceive our rivers. There is really a disconnect. That is why we're having this conversation tonight, so that we can bridge that gap. We can have these thoughts that people can act on those things, not just having the talk, but doing the necessary things so that the people who are in policy understand. I mean, I listened to the environmental minister talk, and you talk about, Henry Shillingford is our problem in Dominica is not for lack of laws. Our problem is for enforcing those laws. Why would you create new laws when you haven't tried the laws that exist on the book to see if they work? The only reason you will create a new law is because there are loopholes or the one you have doesn't work anymore. And that doesn't happen. So if we have a culture of not enforcing laws, creating new laws is not going to solve the problem. What solved the problem is changing the culture and the mindset of the people, and it starts with the young folks. And that's why I think the schools, partnering the schools as with International Day of Action for Rivers is a place to start, and let's build on it.
So Henry, that yes score that you referred to earlier, is that an idea that we need to dust up and try to implement?
Absolutely. All these things are, as Lennon was so passionately saying, and I'm feeling him. This is all true, but it's the whole. It becomes political. You're talking about everything then. In terms of the yes core, again, that's something that can be done. It can be done independently. It's just money. Like, for example, myself and Athie made whale. Now, a lot of children, your next year after you, but certainly from about 2000, from 1997 maybe to about 2004, that went. Every secondary school child in Dominica got to do a whale watch and learned about whale watching,
Oh wow.
whales and dolphins.
Mhm.
And we worked it through a international organization, right? Where I had teachers, I trained, and we had a PowerPoint, slideshows at the time, and I used a Peace Corps teacher, right? And they went to from fourth and fifth form in every high school over a period of time, and so every student that graduated in Dominica, in the high schools, right, got a whale watching trip. Because they gave the show, gave a show, it's a half an hour presentation, and children could ask questions about whales and dolphins. And then they got to go on a whale watch, which the local companies agree with 50 EC as opposed to 50 US, right? Which
Right.
they paid.
Mhm.
And so the whale watching industry benefited. Children learned because they got a further education from the whale watchers and seeing it. And that can be done about rivers. That's my point, Lennon. It's not, because what you're talking about is political change, right?
Yeah.
That's what fundamentally needed in Dominica. Everybody's very clear about that. Who's going to lead it and organize it, and what they're going to agree to, I think is the problem. But be that as it may, it seems to me that if it's not around fundamental environmental issues like rivers and land, and plants, then I don't know which policy you're going to have in Dominica, because that's what you have, right? Unless you're going to be able to passport. So now, in terms of even the laws, as you were talking about, and it really is about the enforcement. It's about the teaching of younger people, but about enforcing things, right? Like I really have to go back to the electoral reform, but it's the same thing in environmental law reform. We do have a really good environmental law reform, by the way, that was done in 2019 by the thing, which coalesces all the acts into one environmental act that they never passed, right? Which
So
really,
some of the work has already been done.
oh, it's all done. I mean, all the works are done. There's an organic island project that's been done by that same organization that Athie started, actually part of government. Lloyd Pascal ran it for years. I'm trying to remember the name of it. They had another guy running it who was very good too. We got a lot of international funding. It wasn't through government and their initiatives, but they create these reports, but they don't use it, but they're sitting there. Athie's report on the integrated land and integrated planning approach, because you can't just plan and impose. The process of planning creates the plan.
Right.
It's an integrated planning process. That's how you create plans for anything, Like this airport. Can you imagine they're doing an airport and they have done no plans? Like this is the state of play we are in Dominica. You know, even when you talk about rivers, they're doing it. Look at what they're doing to parrots and they're just destroying. They're going in marshlands. They've broken the pipe to the Carib territory 8 times in the last 6 months because they're making a new road to go up. Right? Let me tell you where they're going up. Talking about rivers. I mean, there's so many problems. What's that river called? Up next to the Melville Hall River, Crapo River, right? Crapo River is where up in the heights of Crapo River feeds the territory and half of Marigot, right? They're going for stone up there, stone to fill in the swamp in Wesley. So they've cut a big road now, 25-foot road, laid a bridge to go inside to a river to get stone. Now, there's been no environmental impact assessment on that in the river. Yet that is the source for the territory and Marigot. And though I told, because I was in the, I told people in the territory, they haven't, the chief hasn't made a complaint. Gada Khan has had the road for 5 years building in the territory. Gada Khan, I mean, you guys don't understand. I mean, it's really deep entrenched problems here. Now, I agree what we need is diaspora, it's just a matter of money on a lot of levels. And to raise money to do projects that will hopefully inspire people, unless you have control of government range.
There's so much to be done.
Right. But as not to be despondent, I mean, there's really immediate, simple action that can be taken by, a government in real control. I mean, doing what we're saying and getting the forestry to do something for a day or having prime. If you're the government, that's no problem.
Right.
What you want then is NGO buy-in, right? So that you get the numbers and you get the spread, right? But it shouldn't be NGOs doing it. Somebody mentioning NEP. NEP they don't look, they're cleaning the side of the road and planting flowers, like going down to Grand Bay, a deadly landslide place. And even other places are breaking. They got 3 barrels and stones in places where it's breaking. They're not even giving them bamboo to plant. Like that, you plant bamboo on the side of the road, going all up Bellevue, everywhere you go on a hillside in Dominica. Bamboo, there's bioengineering you can use that. You can use plants. Those plants hold the road. They're planting croton and little stupid flowers. So you're paying people to do stupidness, right? It's like what they did in the river. They say they're fixing the river, Rosa River, and they're spoiling it. They're creating dams. It's so stupid. So again, I don't mean to be the thing of sad tale, but we need people down here, man. It's getting despondent, and everybody's getting despondent here because nothing's being done on any level. And environment is the last level,
So Lenin,
people's mind is the front levels of people who are in geology, or people like you who understand everything comes from there. But people are more concerned with.
There's a lot to do. So Len, in terms of WAVE, because you're the public relations officer for WAVE, and we know that WAVE is starting to rise in the consciousness of the public, and being informed by what Henry is saying tonight, both from a historical point of view and also from the bleakness of the inaction. What is WAVE message to the public? What is WAVE saying to the Dominican community? And while you're at it, you can tell folks how they can become members of WAVE, and you don't have to be in Dominica to be a member of WAVE, because both of us are members of WAVE, and we are. I mean, we got you in Texas.
That's the fundamental point. WAVE is supposed to be bringing. It's the wave, that's bringing in the Dominicans to crash on the shores of Dominica. The advocates and the activists.
Yeah. Right? Not waivers that's going to waiver the problem, but waves.
No, it's a wave. But you can see by the symbol, it's a wave.
Yeah, definitely. So Len, what's the outlook in terms of from a wave perspective?
So as you mentioned, WAVE has been in the process of trying to get structured and developed, because at the end of the day, for it to be sustainable, for it to be serious, you have to have good structure. Secondly, in trying to convince people to be in WAVE, I started earlier saying water is life. and I don't mean it lightly because it is life. You pollute the environment, you really pollute in yourself. I'm a geologist. I work in environmental consulting for the past going on 20 years. So that should tell you where I'm coming from. As a Dominican, I think having a clean environment reflects on us as a people, not just our aesthetics, but our well-being, our health, our wealth, who we are, our history, and where we really want to go as a country. I think it's important because we talked about policy, we talked about the environment, we talk about governance, but really and truly for these things to work in our best interest, we have to have civic organization that takes upon itself important aspects of our society to advocate for others and everybody else. Because without organizations like WAVE, without those organizations that are fully vested in having a clean environment, then nothing else works. And as citizens of our country, part of our civic responsibility is one, to adhere to the laws, two, to encourage the creation of rules and laws so that we can coexist. And our coexistence will mean absolutely nothing if our environment is not sustainable, our environment is not healthy, our environment is not clean. So I think on a surface level, WAVE is really just doing what it's supposed to do, what citizens are supposed to do to make sure that they are part of the process. And as much as, we don't want to make it political, but governance is for everybody and politics is for everybody, because these things start with policies. And how we implement those policies is by creating these civic organizations that help not as a nemesis or an adversary, but really a partner in making sure that when we put people to create laws to make a better society, we are actually practicing what we ask them to do. And that's what WAVE is about. That's what every civic organization, when you talk about people in the Cancer Society, when you talk about people like WAVE talking about the environment, when you see Father Coffee going around advocating for the rivers, that's what we're supposed to do. We can't just exist in a society and sit there and expect things to work without us doing action. All of us cannot be in government, but what we can do is we can make sure that the rules that are passed are actually put into practice. And that's what WAVE should be about. And at the end of the day, what we'd like to see is more young people take the environment seriously. When you talk about rivers, when you talk about action for rivers, it's really life. I mean, if we have contamination, if we have lack of water, and what is happening in the world today, there is an issue with not just availability of water, because the world is 72% water. Just for some statistics, the human body is made out of 60% water. Your brain and your heart is about 73% water. 83% water in your 64% water in your skin, 79 in your kidneys. So your body is water. That tells you how important water is to us. And where is our source of fresh, clean water? Is from our rivers. So what we want to do is to see a lot more young people get in there, so we have continuity. So we don't see Athie face and Henry Shillingford year after year after year, like Noah telling people to come on that act because one day it's going to flood and then we'll all lose our lives. But to see more young people say, you know what, I don't have to wait to see the flood for me to know that it's really going to happen. I don't have to wait to see that act built, and I'm stealing that from a preacher I heard over the weekend. I thought was brilliant. But that is what happens. And I think with the slow, one of the things I notice is if you slowly take something away from somebody, they don't realize, because the water doesn't just disappear. Nobody takes it seriously. But slowly and slowly, when you talk to different generations, I remember as a kid, we used to jump down from the Blenheim Bridge and Hampstead Bridge and not touch the bottom. No, you can't do that. You see? So those things are significant because it's so slow. People don't take it seriously. And when it's gone, we'll be sitting there wondering, how did that happen? It happened because we as civilians, we as civic society, did not play our part to ensure that our environment is clean. The reason why we pay ministers and we pay people to make laws for us is because it's important. And I think once we have that consciousness, And I am not Shillingford. I'm not setting my goals too high because after 20 years, I mean, I understand the dynamics in Dominica. I understand the culture in Dominica. If we can get next year on the International Day of Action of Rivers 3 or 4 more new schools, that's a cause for celebration. If we can get 10 or 20 young persons to join WAVE, that's a cause for celebration. If we can get, as far as I saw, the Dominica State College has an environmental club. Several schools have environmental clubs. If we can get those folks on one day to join to do something in the best interest of the country, that's a cause for celebration. So I
That's
think
a win.
at this point, we're looking for the gradual wins, the gradual improvements, and building upon that. Because after 20 years, I mean, there is so much, and there is so much a need for now. It makes it difficult to have a long-term vision as to where we want to be, because everybody's in survival. We got to do so much stuff now. It's difficult to focus on a 5, 6, 7, 8 year, 9 year, 10 year plan. So I think what we need to do is to celebrate the little successes. I have seen an improvement in the participation of International Day of Action for Rivers. It's better than I've ever seen. I think that's something worth mentioning when you have SME, the Dominica State College, the Rosa Boys School,
St. Luke.
the St. Luke's, the Sophia School. There are more schools talking about it. That's an opportunity to help build that consciousness. And let's see what happens next year. Not just next year, but all through the year, talk about the importance of rivers. Go to the schools. Hey, if they want me to do a video presentation, Henry, I'll do it free of charge. I have a lot of stuff in my head we can share with folks. We can do those things, and that's where we are as Wave, because I think without a healthy
So
environment, there's
if
no
a
healthy.
young person is watching and they want to get in, become involved in Wave, what's the information on that?
So we have, Drago, you're gonna have to help me out. I didn't have. We have
Right.
a
Well,
website.
I know there's a Facebook page for sure.
There's a there's
You
a
can
Facebook.
start there. Mhm.
There's a Facebook page. I think we had a YouTube video set up. I know there's a Facebook page, but what we can do is give up
Uh,
the email address for Wave. We
mhm.
have an Wave Dominic. I think we give up the email address for Wave if you want to put it on there. And then folks can email their interest, and we can have registration. We also are trying to get we have a committee and bylaws put together. Um, here it is. So we have bylaws put together. We have board members or officers that we are putting together. So those who are interested in just sharing a little bit of their time can get in contact with myself or you,
Or me,
Drago,
yeah, they get in touch
or
with me. I'm a member
Drago,
of Wave. Hmm.
or yeah, or Father Coffee, or
Got a
Margot, and a
coffee.
few other
Yeah.
folks, and
Henry,
Annie Edwards.
Annie
Annie
Edwards is
Edwards,
interested.
she was the director at the planning division. She's now retired, but I can tell she loves Dominica because now she's doing this voluntarily, sharing her skills as being the leader of with her experience. So we can get in contact with you guys. I think what we'll try to do is once there's going to be um, we'll have representatives from Wave on DBS tomorrow and on Q95 talking about some of the activities. And what we'll try to do is we'll put out the information there. So people who want to join, people who want to find out about the organization, people who want to frankly contribute to having a better environment and being part of the civic organization. Hey, I left Dominica 20 something years ago when I was a 21-year-old. And the reason why I'm here is because for the past 20 years, I am working in somebody else's country, trying to help them have a better environment by doing assessment in groundwater, soil sampling, source removal, all kind of contaminants. And I'm using that skill that I can use in Dominica to better my community and my country. So there are people out there, it doesn't cost anything but a few hours of your time, your ideas, your suggestion. Just bring your experience, and let's see if we can and help build a better environment in Dominica.
Great. Henry, I'm coming to you for closing remarks, really. Um, just what are we going to do? Just encourage people to bring their hats and bring their hands and educate themselves. Information is available.
Yeah,
They say in the age of information, ignorance is a choice.
well,
Um,
as Lennon said, that I
mhm.
just think that they just need more people doing that groundwork, because that's really the struggle. Like Wave is, as I know, has really the only one making initiative against what's happening with the airport. and so there is. But as I'm saying, and your targets are your target. But the energy that's necessary right now can be had by if you were more aggressive energy from abroad, organized towards the issues here. Um, that's what I would say as an overarching thing, because I hear a lot of conscious things being said from abroad in a kind of way. You yourself are not organized in terms of a directed thing, but through waves, I think that's a great way that the diaspora can find their energy in the environmental. So it's not political at any rate. So it's about keeping Dominica, because that's the organization. So the listening audience should, really think about it, because that's how they can contribute, as Lennon was saying. And it's just not contributing, it's contributing to yourself, because that's who you really are. You'll forget that, but that's really where your navel string buried, and whatever you have achieved in America, you know, and some of that is our, solemnity that those of us that are here have, that there isn't more of that. We're not talking all about, there should be energy directed, you know, at the environment. So I wish all you the success. And yeah, those initiatives are all available. Youth Environmental Corps, enforce asking, for the enforcement of these laws. But as again, it's about ways and means to get that across, and it needs commitment. So that's what I would end up saying. But it's live right now. That's the point. That
Yeah,
Dominica needs this right now.
yeah. As Len is saying,
Uh,
there's so
the
much.
windows the windows closing.
Yeah,
The
there's so much
thing about
urgency.
Blenheim and Live at Cannery, those are real things. People, it
Hmm.
happens, and then it's not there anymore. Wow, as you say, that the slow creep. That's what happens everywhere. The slow creep, and people just give up their rights and their consciousness because it's the easy button.
Yeah.
Like, they
So
can turn on your back now.
what I'm getting is, if people have to understand where the end game is, um,
Who's end game?
where the
Who's
end game for Dominica is, either we do something about our rivers and Dominica remains a place of beautiful fresh water that still by and large belong to Dominica, or where we continue to see our rivers being abused and we lose a lot of them. And the other unthinkable thing that one of the viewers was talking about is seeing a foreign entity come and capture the water and exploit it for their benefit. And that's not far fetched, because we see a number of countries where there's oil, there's petroleum, and we see foreign companies come and they benefit from the extraction of those petroleum. And the people right next door to where the refineries are living in poverty and suffering from the pollution. That's all they get from it is pollution. So Dominicans have to wake up. As I said, in this age of information, ignorance is a choice. Um, People like Wave and Henry and Athie and Father Coffee and all the other folks are trying to play their part, but right now they're shouting in the wind. And so we have to, as Dominicans, understand that if we are Dominican, what does it mean to be a Dominican? We boast of our naturalness and our rivers. So if we're willing to watch our rivers deteriorate, it means that we're watching ourselves deteriorate. And so
oh,
there is that need to really um, take stock and take action. And so Len, I want to congratulate Wave, um, and the soldiers, the constant soldiers like Henry and Afi and Father Coffee and Margot and everybody else who somehow keeping that ember burning, so that we hope that one day it can catch and you can get a flame. So congratulations, all the best. There's something happening at the Arch tomorrow, is there? Len, is there something happening at the Arch tomorrow?
Didn't you just put up the banner? Wasn't that the banner you put up for
It
March
was just a general, but I know there was supposed to be a match, and then there's no longer a match. But some of the school students are supposed to come to the arch tomorrow. Let me see if I go into my text and see um, what tomorrow at uh, at 9:30 a.m. a 30-minute discussion with Ivonia on DBS radio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's stuff going on. It's dynamic because there was supposed to be a gathering at the Arch and then a match for Roseau. I think the match is no longer on. Some of the school students are going to be at the Arch with their banners um, and deliver their message.
The
And
march was prevented, or
I
they
don't
just.
know. I don't know the reason why it's no longer happening,
Oh,
but the match is not happening. It's not clear what happened. I really don't know. Um, Well, the
oh.
match is not supposed to be something that can be prevented, you know.
Well, I
But
mean, no. I mean, if it's children marching for the environment, it would be another sign. I'm saying. I mean, I hope it was because of some technical
that's what
reason.
I'm saying. I didn't get the reason. I just know that they said that they were not going to match anymore. They were going to gather at the arch and just be in that environment of the Rosa River. I know the St. Luke's primary school had quite a few activities. They started on the 11th, right up till Friday. They're going to a picnic at the Lai River. They're doing quite a bit at the St. Luke's primary school. So Um, thank you to Miss Riviere. And I think she said Miss Pelry was assisting with that. Henry, there are some glimmers of hope because a number of schools have environmental clubs. The 4-H club seem to be very interested in working with us. So there's some room for coordination. And so, listeners, I encourage you to reach out. Some of these things are not free, even if a simple gathering, they have to get water for the kids and so on. So there's some need for some kind of financial contribution. It doesn't ask for a fortune. Um, Father Coffee is saying a number of schools all over the island will be having their own day of action for rivers. And also at Rivers and Rosalie Forest Eco Lodge, they're having activities. So there's some rumbling, and hopefully, Wave is starting to be a glue that can bring all of it together and really show the impact of what's happening. So, folks, tomorrow is International Day for Action for Rivers. If you have nothing else planned, at least in your busy day, stop at a river, pick up a debris, even if it's just to stop at the river and bless it. Say, I appreciate you, river. I appreciate the role that you play, the water that you deliver. Just bless the river, even if that's all you have the opportunity to do. Even if you don't go next to a river, stay where you are. And if you're Dominican, you have a river in your memory. Just think about the river and spend some time thinking about what it would be like if the river was no longer part of our life, what it would feel like, and make a vow to prevent that from happening. Henry, you want to jump in?
No, no, no.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
just
okay.
I'm very impressed by what Father Coffee says and what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So there is some there's a need for Wave and other organizations to help shape it, but I can tell you there was quite a bit of enthusiasm on
Very
the
good.
idea
I
from it.
will
And
check that.
next year I imagine the 4-H club, and I think there's a 4-H club in almost every school in Dominica now, and they've expressed an interest with partnering on some of these things. So there's hope. There's hope. You know, there's definitely hope. Len, you're back, but I think we're about to wrap it up
Um,
unless you have some
yeah.
final closing
Oh
remarks.
yeah, sorry about that. I think I lose connection. But I
You did.
tomorrow at 10 a.m. there will be a meet at the Arch.
10
I know
a.m.
that,
Okay.
yeah, 10 a.m. So there's some kids I know from the Dominica State College. I know SMA said they were interested. Wave will be there doing an opening remarks. Father Coffee will give a blessing. there will be some performances, there will be some poetry and some activities by the kids. So it's just like I said, man, Henry. I know it's been rough, but we have to start with molding and motivating the kids, because I think some of the old people are already lost. So we try to get the young ones involved, and if we can get one or two of those folks to buy in and to buy in into the understanding that the environment is the rivers are us. We are the rivers are us. Then hopefully we'll have a better future.
Okay.
All right.
So, gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate not just your time, but your passionate engagement in the topic. On behalf of the audience, we learned. Len gave us a geography class, and I agree with you. It wasn't no elementary school geography class. It was in depth and really broken down in format that lay people can understand. And so let's move it forward. The whole idea is to move forward. Whether
Yeah.
we start with one step at a time and we pick up speed and we accelerate, let's just keep it moving forward. So happy day for action for Rivers, and all the best. Congratulations to Waverly. Henry, I know you were also instrumental in the formation
Well,
of
in the
Greater Wales,
formation.
so the formation of Wales. So thank
And
you for that as well.
the specific point was for us to pass on, what we have done to the new generation, because it was becoming, as he's been saying, it's like it's me and Athie's issue. It's not Dominica's issue.
That's all we can issue.
Like it's our personal issue.
And of course, Athie, I want to say thank
It's
you to Athie
ridiculous.
for his
Like
contribution.
our personal issue.
He
Okay.
had, unfortunately, a drop off, but we know his message. And so, folks, I thank you so much
His message is
for
very clear. If Athie's two messages was that it's already there, just to be enforced, and it's simple. Like
Yep,
we make things more complicated than it is, and Dominique is a simple place. And that's one of the diaspora has to remember that, like it's really simple
really
compared to
simple.
where y'all are at.
Yeah,
And but that you just when you transform it, it can have real impact, you know.
right, right. All right.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for
folks,
the
good night.
opportunity
Thank you
and
very
thank
much.
you to
Thank
the
you.
audience.
Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
listeners, for tuning in. I'm a water guy. I like everything water and environment. I'm a tree hugger. I hate to see trees get cut down. I hate to see water get polluted.
Same
And
here, man.
I got my start from being in the 4-H club in Castlebrooks Primary School. I was a member of the 4-H club. We used to have a little garden next to the police station, and we would go in there and plant the vegetables and that sort of thing. My mom was in social league, so they would also make their pepper sauce and all those things. And then in grammar school, I became a member of the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme, and then came back to Dominica and was in the Dominica JCs. And so organizations like Wave and all of those other organizations, they do more than just give you an opportunity to pass them. They actually shape your character and shape your personality. And so it's really a gem and a blessing for young people to have the opportunity to join. Imagine a young person joining Wave, and they can get to interact directly with Lennon and all of that
Yeah.
information that he has as a geologist and a geography teacher, and learn so much one on one. Interact with Henry Shillingford, interact with Annie Edwards, who was the director of planning. Can you imagine if, as a young person, you have access to those people and that wealth of information? I can tell you, as part of the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme, I picked up a lot. Um, Sir Francis Senior sort of took me under his wing, and he would invite me to some of his functions and explain so much to me in terms of protocol and
Yeah.
policy and all of that. I learned so much from that. Um, and the folks at the youth division, Amoy Williams and Miss Alfred and later, those are the opportunities that help create you and your character. So
Hey,
it's
hey,
awesome
Drago,
if you can.
Drago.
Go
Before
ahead.
you go, I just wanted to mention, as you said that, I recently got an invite to be on the advisory board of the Advanced Environmental Research Institute at University of North Texas in Denton.
Mhm.
The thing about it is, I get an opportunity to influence research in a university, and
Right.
that didn't stem from me. That stemmed from my background, being in geography, being in biology, being in environmental work. That all started in Dominica. So you never know where you end up, but at the end of the day, that's how important these things are. You have universities that are doing millions of dollars worth of grant to help in environmental research because it is important. So I'm not just here because I want to hang out with you. I should say that hanging out with you is right. I think it's important and serious. I think it's really really important and it's really serious. So if the young folks can get in the program, realize that the environmental is them, then we can have a lot great things for Wave and for the environment in Dominica.
Awesome. So thank you again, Len, and I want to say good night to folks. So much good information, so much participation from the audience. Father Coffee suggesting sharing this conversation with the various environmental clubs. I think that's a good idea. When Facebook sends the report every week, a few thousand people see this program. So hopefully it's going to spur some um, inspiration, some environmental inspiration, and we can get a few more fanatics. We have to be fanatic and passionate about the environment, about protecting the environment, because I can tell you, we're taking our rivers for granted, but the day they start to get polluted and you start getting diseases like cholera and dysentery and all of those things, we don't want to leave that behind for our children and our grandchildren, because our parents were able to pass it on to us in a certain condition. It is our duty to pass it on in a better condition than we left it. And with that, I want to tell you good night and thank you so much for tuning in and staying with us through the entire program. Tomorrow is Pie Day, so eat some pie. I don't know, apple pie, aloe pie is 3.14 tomorrow. Um, I know there's a few folks who celebrating their birthdays. Happy birthday to you. And one of the fans also is her birthday is on the 15th. So happy birthday to you as well. So folks, let's do this again next week. On the 20th is World Water Day, so we're staying with the theme, and we will do a special program on water. So don't mix it up. Tomorrow is the day of action for rivers. Next week, Wednesday the 20th, is World Water Day. And then sometime in September is World Rivers Day. And it's not too much water, like I say, water, water, water. Because if you are a Dominican, you have to be passionate and comfortable about water. All right, so good night, folks. Have a good night. And tomorrow, do something, even if all you can do is think about rivers and the preservation of rivers. Let's do that. Good night.